What would you do if a child carried the weight of a debt she never created? Imagine a girl so young her arms tremble just from lifting a bucket of water, yet she's told she must serve until the sins of her father are erased. Tonight, her story begins not with laughter or comfort, but with a stumble on a dirt path, water spilling across the ground, and a shout so sharp it cuts through the silence. The creditor's voice rises, cruel and unforgiving, scolding her as if she were less than human. She lowers her gaze, not daring to meet his eyes, and in that quiet moment you see it, her sorrow, her strength, her plea for kindness she has never known. Her small hands tremble as she sets the bucket down again. Dust clings to her face. Her body looks far too fragile for the burdens she's forced to carry. This isn't just a chore, it is punishment disguised as work, a sentence imposed on a child who never asked for it. While others her age hold books or toys, she holds chains made of debt. And every lash of the creditor's words reminds her of what was taken, her father, her childhood, her freedom. The backstory unfolds slowly, like a shadow creeping into view. Her father's sudden death left behind not wealth, but a ledger of numbers he could never repay. With no mother to shield her, no relatives willing to intervene, she became the creditor's possession. Day after day, night after night, she labors in silence, scrubbing floors until her fingers blister, carrying loads that bend her spine. Sleep never comes easy because exhaustion isn't rest, it's survival. And still, she whispers to herself in the dark, one day, kindness will come. But the cruelty doesn't stop. Each mistake, no matter how small, draws the creditor's wrath. A plate not shining enough. A floor not spotless. A moment of weakness, punished with insults that echo in her mind, your father was worthless. And you will pay for his failure. The words stab deeper than hunger ever could. Yet even as tears threaten to fall, she swallows them, refusing to let her suffering give him satisfaction. The town sees her. Neighbors watch from windows and doorways as she stumbles under buckets of water or drags sacks of grain too heavy for her shoulders. Some pity her, but none dare intervene. Fear of the creditor's power silences them. And so she remains unseen, her pain hidden in plain sight. A ghost among the living. But within her heart, there is still a spark. A memory of her father's smile. He once told her, even the coldest winter cannot keep spring away. Those words are all she clings to now. She repeats them silently while sweeping, while serving meals she is never allowed to taste, while shivering alone in the corner of a dark room. That fragile hope is her secret rebellion, her invisible shield against despair. As the story lingers in this moment, the tension rises. She is small, she is powerless, yet something within her refuses to break. And though she cannot see it, change is already on its way. A stranger, a man of wealth and influence, will soon step into her world. Not as another master. Not as another cruel voice. But as the answer to the promise she's been whispering all along. For now, though, all we see is a child, standing in silence as the creditor's anger burns into the night air. She grips the bucket tighter, her back aching, her heart heavy, yet her spirit, though bruised, remains unbroken. What she doesn't know, what the creditor doesn't expect, is that their lives are about to collide with a force neither of them can control, justice born from kindness, power wielded not to enslave, but to set free. And so, the first chapter closes not with rescue, but with the echo of footsteps fading into the dark. A girl still bound. A creditor still cruel. A world still indifferent. But behind the curtain of tomorrow, destiny waits, quiet, patient, inevitable. Because cruelty may rule for a moment, but kindness has a way of rewriting even the harshest story. What if the debt of one man could steal not only his life, but also his child's freedom? That's the cruel truth at the heart of this story, and it begins long before the bucket spilled and the creditor shouted. To understand her pain, we have to go back to the moment her father drew his last breath, leaving behind more than grief. He left behind a chain made of numbers, ink, and signatures. A chain that bound his daughter to a life she never chose. He wasn't a wealthy man, but he was kind. A laborer who worked until his body gave out. He had dreams for his little girl, dreams of her learning to read, of her smiling without fear. But sudden illness struck, swift and merciless. In just a few days, he was gone. And with his passing, the creditor came knocking, ledger in hand, his voice dripping with false sympathy. There was no mercy in his tone, only calculation. No family stepped forward. No neighbor dared challenge his claim. And so the girl, barely old enough to understand death, was handed over as repayment. The creditor told himself he was a man of business, not cruelty. But every command, every harsh word, proved otherwise. To him, she was not a child, she was labor. A body to sweep his floors, scrub his dishes, carry his loads. The spark in her eyes was an inconvenience, and he sought to extinguish it day after day. Yet, despite his efforts, the memory of her father's words kept her alive inside. The rhythm of her days became predictable, almost mechanical. Before the sun rose, she was already awake, sweeping dust from the courtyard. When others were eating breakfast, she carried water. At noon, while laughter floated from the marketplace, she bent over in silence, sorting grains. At night, when families gathered to rest, she curled up in a corner, hunger gnawing at her stomach. Every moment was accounted for, every breath spent repaying a debt she never created. But there's something about children, they notice the world even when burdened. As she worked, her eyes wandered. She saw the baker's daughter run free, carrying loaves in a basket. She saw boys her age laughing as they chased each other through the streets. She saw mothers wiping tears from scraped knees. And every glimpse was a reminder of what she had lost. Loneliness became her constant companion, but she never let it turn into bitterness. Instead, she clung to one quiet promise: someday, someone would see her not as a servant, but as a child. The cruelty of her situation grew clearer with every passing day. The creditor seemed to take pleasure in reminding her of her father's supposed failures. Your father owed me. And now, you owe me. You'll work until the debt is gone or until you are. Each word etched deeper into her heart. And still, she endured. Not because she was unfeeling, but because she refused to let despair have the final word. In the background of this quiet suffering, the community whispered. They pitied her, yes, but fear of the creditor's influence kept their compassion at bay. Some said, "It is tragic, but what can be done?" Others looked away, convincing themselves she was stronger than she looked. But deep down, guilt gnawed at them. For they all knew her father's debt was not her crime to pay. And yet, fate has a way of weaving unexpected threads. One morning, as the creditor prepared for an important visitor, the girl was told to scrub the floors until they shone. She obeyed, hands raw and knees bruised, unaware that this visitor would change her life. She did not know that destiny was about to bring a man into her world who would see not her labor, but her suffering. For now, she remained silent, caught in a cycle of endless chores. But behind her silence was something unshakable: hope. Fragile, quiet, almost invisible, but alive. And hope, no matter how small, has the power to turn stories of sorrow into tales of redemption. What neither she nor the creditor knew was that their next chapter was about to begin not with mercy, but with confrontation that would shatter the chains holding her down. How much pain can a child carry before her spirit breaks? That question hangs heavy as we step deeper into her world, a place where kindness is scarce and every sunrise means another test of endurance. The creditor has grown sharper, less patient, his orders more demanding with each passing day. It's not just about chores anymore, it's about control, about crushing whatever dignity she has left. The girl hauls a basket heavier than her frame can handle, her legs trembling as she moves across the yard. Dust swirls around her, clinging to her clothes and skin. She bites her lip, determined not to stumble, because she knows what will follow if she does. Yet her small body gives way, the basket slipping, spilling its contents across the ground. The sound is enough to summon the creditor's fury. He storms forward, his face twisted with anger, spitting words that cut deeper than any lash, useless. Just like your father. For a moment, her eyes close. Not from fear, but from memory. She hears her father's voice again, soft and steady, telling her that strength is not in never falling, but in rising each time. She whispers to herself, barely audible, one day, kindness will come. Those words are her shield, her quiet rebellion against the cruelty she endures. But cruelty does not relent. The creditor piles more work onto her fragile shoulders, almost as if he wants to see how far she can bend before breaking. Sweep faster. Carry more. Scrub harder. His commands echo across the courtyard, each one pulling her further into exhaustion. Her hands are raw, blistered. Her back aches as though it might snap. Still, she presses on, not because she has strength left, but because surrender would mean letting him win. The community watches, whispers spreading through the streets. Some shake their heads in pity, others turn away to avoid the discomfort of her suffering. A few wonder quietly how long a child can endure such treatment. But no one acts. Fear holds them back. Fear of debt, fear of power, fear of being targeted next. And so the girl remains alone, carrying burdens that belong to no one her age. The struggle deepens when the creditor strikes at the very memory she treasures most. He mocks her father, calling him worthless, declaring that his death was a blessing. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Her breath catches, tears threaten, but she refuses to let them fall. She grips the edge of the table she's cleaning, her knuckles white, her heart aching. Yet inside, something fierce flickers, an ember of defiance that even he cannot extinguish. The nights are no easier than the days. When the world grows quiet, she curls up on a thin mat, her body aching from endless labor. She stares at the ceiling, tracing cracks in the wood, whispering to herself, one day. It is a mantra, a lifeline, a promise she refuses to let go of. For if hope dies, then she will too. It is in these moments of deepest struggle that the stage is being set for change. She cannot see it yet, but her suffering is about to collide with something greater than herself. The creditor, blinded by greed and arrogance, believes she will remain his servant forever. He believes the world will look away, just as it always has. But he is wrong. Fate has already moved the pieces. Somewhere beyond the walls of this house, a man of means prepares to arrive. A man who sees not just numbers on a ledger, but people. A man whose life of wealth has not erased his humanity. And soon, their paths will cross. But for now, all she knows is struggle. All she feels is the weight of endless demands. And all she clings to is a whisper of hope that tomorrow might be different. What she doesn't know is that tomorrow won't just be different, it will be the day her world begins to change forever. What if the smallest act of kindness could stop years of cruelty in its tracks? That question hangs in the air the day the millionaire arrives at the creditor's home. He comes not searching for drama, not seeking conflict, but simply to close a business deal. His carriage rolls up, polished and commanding, and the creditor rushes to greet him with a smile that hides his greed. To the outside world, this man is respectable. But behind those walls, his cruelty thrives unchecked. The girl doesn't know who the visitor is. She only knows that she must work harder, faster, because important eyes are watching. She drags a bucket across the courtyard, arms trembling, legs weak from exhaustion. Her hair clings to her face with sweat, but she presses forward, desperate not to fail. Yet fate plays its part. Her foot catches on a stone, and the bucket crashes to the ground. Water spreads like a dark stain across the dirt. The creditor's face twists with rage. In front of his guest, he cannot allow imperfection. He storms toward the girl, his hand lifting high, ready to strike. For a split second, time slows. The girl's eyes shut tight, bracing for the blow. The townspeople who have gathered nearby hold their breath, their pity warring with their fear. And then, it doesn't come. The millionaire's hand shoots out, firm and steady, catching the creditor's arm midair. Shock ripples through the crowd. No one has ever dared to stop him before. The girl opens her eyes, startled, as if unsure whether what she's seeing is real. The millionaire turns his gaze to the trembling child, then back to the creditor, his voice calm but edged with steel. "What is this? Who is she?" The creditor falters, stammering excuses. He calls her nothing more than repayment, a burden he was forced to take in. He insists she is clumsy, ungrateful, and worth more in labor than in kindness. His words fall flat in the air, exposed for what they are: lies crafted to mask cruelty. The millionaire kneels beside the girl, his tone softening. "How long have you been here?" She lowers her gaze, unable to speak, but the silence says more than words ever could. The truth is written in the bruises on her arms, the weariness in her eyes, the way her small body shakes from both exhaustion and fear. Rising to his full height, the millionaire turns back to the creditor. "Name the debt. I will pay it in full." The words hang heavy, not as a plea but as a command cloaked in generosity. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Could it really be so simple? Could her chains be broken with a single transaction? But greed has a way of blinding men. The creditor sneers, shaking his head. "No amount of money will release her. She is worth more to me than coin. She will work until I say otherwise." His pride flares, determined not to appear weak before his wealthy guest. In his arrogance, he pushes the millionaire's offer aside, believing he holds the power. The girl lowers her head again, hope flickering only to dim. For a moment, it seems as if nothing will change, as if her suffering will continue just as before. The townspeople whisper among themselves, hearts breaking, yet their silence remains. But the millionaire does not argue. He does not raise his voice. Instead, his eyes narrow, his expression calm, as if weighing something far beyond this single conversation. Without another word, he steps back, letting the creditor believe he has won. To the outside eye, it looks like defeat. To the creditor, it feels like victory. Yet beneath the surface, something has shifted. The girl watches him go, confusion etched across her face. She does not understand why he offered help only to walk away. But destiny works in quiet ways. Sometimes the storm is not in the shout, it is in the silence that follows. What no one knows yet, not even the creditor, is that this refusal has set into motion a reckoning he cannot escape. For in that brief moment, the millionaire saw enough. He saw the cruelty, the exploitation, the injustice. And while the creditor celebrated his own pride, the seeds of his downfall had already been planted. What comes next will not just surprise the community, it will shatter the chains that held the girl captive and expose the truth the creditor worked so hard to hide. What happens when pride blinds a man so much that he refuses even freedom bought with gold? That's what the community witnessed as the creditor rejected the millionaire's offer. Instead of mercy, he clung to his cruelty, doubling down with a cold grin that chilled everyone watching. He puffed up his chest, savoring his supposed victory, believing no one could touch him. And as if to prove his dominance, he turned back to the girl, his voice sharp, his commands harsher than ever. From that day forward, the work multiplied. Tasks grew heavier, punishments sharper. The girl was told to carry loads twice her size, to scrub until her hands bled, to endure long hours with no rest. Every stumble was treated like rebellion. Every sigh like defiance. The creditor believed he had proven his strength, not realizing he had only sealed his downfall. The townspeople shook their heads in hushed conversations. Why refuse such an offer? Why not release her when the debt could have been cleared? But fear kept their voices low. They worried that speaking out would bring the creditor's wrath upon them too. So they stood at a distance, torn between compassion and self-preservation. They pitied the girl, but no one dared intervene. Through it all, she carried the memory of the stranger who had stopped the blow. For the first time in years, someone had stepped between her and cruelty. Even though he walked away, the image of his hand catching the creditor's strike replayed in her mind like a fragile promise. In the quiet of night, when she curled up exhausted, she clung to that moment. It was proof that the world still held men capable of justice. But the creditor mistook silence for surrender. He believed the millionaire's calm retreat meant defeat. He strutted through the marketplace, boasting that no one could touch him, that not even the wealthy dared challenge his authority. His arrogance swelled, while the girl's body grew weaker with each passing day. Yet her spirit, though weary, refused to completely break. The echo of her father's words kept her standing, even the coldest winter cannot keep spring away. The tension grew unbearable. Neighbors whispered that perhaps fate was cruel, that perhaps this child would never see freedom. But destiny has a way of moving quietly, in places unseen. While the creditor congratulated himself, he never noticed the careful eyes watching him. He never realized that the man he dismissed so easily had left not in defeat, but in silence to prepare something far greater than money. And so the creditor tightened his grip, blind to the storm building around him. He ordered the girl to wake before dawn, to labor until her knees buckled, to work without pause as if she were not human but a tool. He laughed at her pain, convinced she would never escape. He didn't know that justice was already knocking at his door, hidden behind quiet paperwork, sealed documents, and the weight of law. For now, the girl still bowed her head, still whispered her mantra into the night, one day. She had no way of knowing that her words were about to be answered, not by chance, but by the very man who had walked away with silent resolve. What looked like surrender was in fact strategy. What felt like abandonment was the beginning of her deliverance. And when the storm finally broke, it would not be a whisper. It would arrive with footsteps that shook the ground, with voices of authority, with chains meant not for her, but for the man who believed he was untouchable. The creditor's days of power were numbered, and he didn't even know it. What if the chains that bound you your entire life broke in a single morning? That is exactly what the girl awoke to, though she didn't know it yet. The sun had barely risen when pounding rattled the creditor's front door. He barked angrily, shoving the girl aside, certain it was another merchant come too early. But when he opened the door, it wasn't a merchant standing there, it was government officials, accompanied by uniformed officers, their expressions firm and unyielding. The creditor's pride drained from his face. Papers were thrust into his hands. Accusations filled the air: unpaid taxes, illegal exploitation, fraudulent dealings. His protests tumbled out in desperate waves, but no one listened anymore. The community gathered quickly, whispers spreading like wildfire as the once feared man stumbled under the weight of justice. His voice, once sharp and commanding, now cracked with panic. And there, among the crowd, stood the millionaire. He said nothing at first, his silence louder than any speech. He didn't need to boast, didn't need to gloat. His actions spoke for him. He had taken the creditor's arrogance and turned it into his undoing. Where cruelty once seemed unstoppable, accountability now stood tall. The girl, frozen in the doorway, could hardly believe her eyes. For years she had been told there was no escape, no mercy, no future. And now, the very man who chained her was being led away in disgrace, his empire crumbling before the eyes of those who once feared him. She blinked, almost afraid it was a dream, until the millionaire stepped toward her. His expression softened, his voice steady. "You're free now. No more debt. No more chains. You are not a servant, you are family." Her knees gave way, tears streaming down her face. For the first time, they were not tears of exhaustion or despair, but tears of release. The weight she carried for so long dissolved in an instant. She whispered the words she had repeated night after night: "One day, kindness will come." And now, that day had arrived. In the weeks that followed, her transformation was nothing short of extraordinary. Gone were the rags, the bruises, the endless chores. She wore clean clothes, sat at a school desk, and for the first time held books in her hands instead of burdens. Her laughter, once silent, began to echo again. The community who once watched helplessly now saw living proof that cruelty may rule for a season, but it never has the final word. The millionaire didn't just rescue her, he gave her a chance to grow, to heal, to rediscover herself. He didn't see her as a debt to erase but as a life worth nurturing. And in her quiet moments, she no longer whispered "one day," because that day had become her reality. Her story is more than just the downfall of a greedy man, it's a reminder of what happens when compassion refuses to stay silent. It tells us that kindness is not weakness, that justice doesn't always roar, sometimes it arrives quietly, but when it comes, it changes everything. And maybe, as you hear her journey, you're reminded of your own moments of struggle, times when hope felt far away, when life felt unfair. Let this story remind you that no matter how heavy the chains may seem, there is always a path toward freedom, toward healing, toward love. Cruelty may try to chain the innocent, but kindness, steady and patient, always finds a way to set them free. If this story touched you, stay with us for more journeys of resilience, redemption, and hope. Because sometimes, hearing a story like this isn't just about them, it's about remembering that kindness can rewrite anyone's tomorrow, including yours.